Beneath the sarcophagus lies darkness, tunnels carved through radioactive earth, chambers sealed and forgotten, and secrets that the Soviet Union took to its grave. This is the story of what lies beneath Reactor 4, the hidden places, the unmarked rooms, the questions that remain unanswered in the blackout zone of Chernobyl. Close your eyes, let us descend into the depths, into the places where radiation makes cameras fail and memories fade, into the secrets buried beneath concrete and steel and lies. The tunnel was 136 meters long. It was dug in just 15 days. 400 miners, volunteers from the Donbass coalfields, worked around the clock in conditions that would have killed most men. The heat was unbearable, over 40 degrees Celsius. The radiation was lethal, and yet they dug. It was May of 1986, 2 weeks after the explosion. The Soviet government was terrified, not just of the radiation spreading across Europe, not just of the international embarrassment, but of something worse, something that kept the Politburo awake at night. The core was melting. 2,000 tons of uranium and graphite and steel heated to temperatures that turned solid metal into liquid. The corium, they called it, the elephant's foot, a flowing mass of radioactive lava that was burning through the floor of Reactor 4, seeking the path of least resistance, seeking the ground beneath. And beneath the reactor was water, the cooling pools, the steam tunnels, and deeper still the water table, the aquifer that fed the Pripyat River, the river that flowed into the Dnieper that supplied water to Kiev, to southern Ukraine, to millions of people. If the corium reached that water, the steam explosion would be catastrophic, and the contamination would spread through the water system, poisoning the Black Sea itself. This was the nightmare scenario. This was why the miners were called. Dig a tunnel, they were told. Dig beneath the reactor. We will install a cooling system. We will stop the melt. We will save millions of lives. The miners descended into hell willingly, many stripped naked, the heat too intense for clothing. They worked in shifts of mere minutes, the radiation too high for longer exposure. They dug through sand and clay with hands and simple tools, pushing deeper beneath the burning reactor above them. They completed the tunnel on June 24th, a feat of human endurance and sacrifice. The cooling system was never installed. The corium had stopped flowing on its own, solidifying 3 floors down, just meters from the ground. The tunnel was deemed redundant. It was filled with concrete to strengthen the foundation. The miners went home. Many would die of cancer in the years to come. But here is what they do not tell you in the official reports. The tunnel the miners dug was not the only tunnel beneath Reactor 4. The Chernobyl plant was built with extensive underground infrastructure, steam tunnels connecting the reactors, cooling water channels, maintenance corridors, service passages, a labyrinth of concrete and steel beneath the surface, some of it documented, much of it not. And there are stories, whispers from liquidators who worked in the zone, tales from guards who patrolled the perimeter, rumors that spread among the workers who remained at the plant for years after the disaster. They speak of sealed doors in the basement levels, of passages that lead nowhere on the blueprints, of chambers discovered during cleanup operations that were not supposed to exist, rooms with equipment that had nothing to do with power generation, labs with medical tables and restraints, storage areas filled with documents that were immediately confiscated by men in KGB uniforms. The Soviet Union had secrets. This is not conspiracy. This is history. They conducted experiments that the world would condemn. They built facilities in remote locations where prying eyes could not reach. And Chernobyl, isolated, guarded, with its own dedicated power supply, was the perfect location for work that needed to remain hidden. Deep in the forests surrounding Chernobyl stood another secret. Duga, the Russian woodpecker, a massive radar installation, 700 meters long and 150 meters tall. An array of antennas that pulsed electromagnetic signals across the world, disrupting radio broadcasts, interfering with emergency frequencies, driving shortwave operators mad with its relentless tapping sound. On official Soviet maps, Duga was marked as a children's summer camp. In reality, it was a top-secret over-the-horizon radar system designed to detect incoming American missiles. It consumed enormous amounts of electricity. Some believe this is why it was built so close to Chernobyl. The nuclear plant could provide the power Duga needed, power that would not appear on any public records, power that was off the books. Over 1,500 military personnel and scientists worked at Duga. They lived in a secret city that did not officially exist. They conducted research that has never been fully declassified. And when the Chernobyl disaster occurred, Duga was evacuated along with everything else in the exclusion zone. But what if Duga was not just a radar? What if the electromagnetic pulses it generated had other purposes? There are those who whisper about mind control experiments, about attempts to manipulate human consciousness using radio waves. Soviet science in the 1970s and 80s was exploring the boundaries of what was possible. Psychotronics, they called it, the study of mental influence through technology. Documents exist, partially declassified files from KGB archives, references to research into controlling animal behavior through electromagnetic stimulation, experiments in implanting simple commands into minds, not science fiction, science fact, documented, acknowledged. But how far did it go? What was the true purpose of Duga, and what was being studied in the underground facilities near Reactor 4? The liquidators tell other stories, stories of the dead. 500,000 men worked to clean up Chernobyl. They cleared radioactive debris, they buried contaminated soil, they built the sarcophagus, and many of them died, not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly over months and years, their bodies destroyed by radiation poisoning. The official death toll varies depending on who is counting: 31 in the immediate aftermath, 4,000 from long-term radiation effects, according to some estimates, 60,000 according to others, but the liquidators themselves believe the number is far higher. They speak of colleagues who disappeared, of crews that went into the zone and never came out, of graves that were never marked, of names that were never recorded. There are areas in the exclusion zone that remain off-limits even today, not because of radiation levels, though those are certainly dangerous, but because of what lies there. Burial sites, the guards will tell you if pressed, mass grave for contaminated equipment and materials, but the liquidators whisper of something else. Burial sites for the workers themselves, men who received lethal doses and were buried where they fell, their bodies too contaminated to transport, their deaths too inconvenient to acknowledge. The basement of Pripyat hospital holds evidence that supports these dark tales. When the firefighters arrived at Reactor 4 on the night of the explosion, they climbed onto the roof of the burning building with no protective equipment. They picked up chunks of graphite with their bare hands, not knowing they were handling material so radioactive it delivered a lethal dose in seconds. When they were brought to the hospital, their uniforms were cut off and thrown into the basement. Those uniforms remain there today, scattered across the floor of a flooded basement room. Radiation levels in that room exceed 100 millisieverts per hour. A human standing there would receive a potentially lethal dose in less than an hour. The clothing of dead men, abandoned in the dark. The hospital was evacuated. The patients were moved, but the basement was sealed, too dangerous to clean, too radioactive to forget. What else was sealed? What other rooms in Pripyat, in the plant itself, were locked and left behind? The sarcophagus built around Reactor 4 is a massive structure, but it was constructed in desperate haste. There was no time for thorough documentation, no opportunity for careful planning. The structure was thrown together in 6 months using remote-controlled equipment and men working in shifts measured in seconds. Inside that sarcophagus is a labyrinth. Multiple floors of the original reactor building remain, though heavily damaged. The reactor core itself is a pit of radioactive chaos, but there are spaces that have never been fully explored. Rooms that were sealed by the explosion or buried under debris, chambers that exist on old blueprints but cannot be accessed safely. Drones sent into the sarcophagus have discovered areas that should not exist, voids in the structure where the architecture does not match the plans, equipment that was not listed in the reactor's inventory, and in some of the camera footage, before the electronics fail from radiation damage, there are glimpses of doorways leading deeper, staircases descending into darkness, passages that suggest the reactor building was more complex than the public ever knew. The new safe confinement, The massive arch built over the original sarcophagus in 2016 is designed to allow dismantling of the reactor. Remote-controlled robots will eventually enter the structure, cut apart the debris, remove the radioactive materials. That work is scheduled to take decades. It may take a century. And as they work, as they dig deeper into the wreckage, what will they find? What secrets lie buried beneath the concrete and steel? The Soviet Union is gone. The KGB files have been partially declassified. Some secrets have been revealed, but not all. There are documents that remain sealed, files that are still classified, and there are secrets that died with those who knew them. Scientists who worked on classified projects and took their knowledge to the grave. Officials who ordered cover-ups and never confessed. Workers who saw things they were ordered to forget. Chernobyl was not just a power plant. It was a symbol of Soviet technological achievement. It was a source of national pride, and it was a convenient location for work that needed isolation and security. The combination of nuclear power, military infrastructure, and government secrecy created the perfect environment for projects that could not be conducted elsewhere. We know some of what happened. We know about the tunnel the miners dug. We know about Duga and its true purpose. We know about the cover-up, the lies, the deliberate withholding of information that cost lives. These are facts, documented, proven. But what we do not know fills the spaces between facts. The rumors that circulate among those who worked in the zone. The stories told by liquidators over bottles of vodka, tales they would never repeat on record. The whispers of sealed labs and hidden experiments and chambers beneath the reactor that were never meant to be found. Are they true? Some certainly are. The Soviet Union conducted experiments that violate every ethical standard. This is not speculation. This is history. They tested biological weapons on their own people. They subjected soldiers to nuclear tests without protection. They operated secret cities where thousands lived and worked on projects the world knew nothing about. Would they have used Chernobyl for similar purposes? The isolation, the security, the dedicated power supply, the justification that anything done there was in service of the peaceful atom, of progress, of the future. It would have been easy. It would have been logical. It would have been consistent with how the Soviet system operated. The truth is we may never know. The blackout zone beneath Reactor 4 is not just physical, it is historical. It is a void where facts end and questions begin, where documentation was destroyed or never existed, where witnesses are dead or silent, where the radiation itself erases evidence, making thorough investigation impossible. The new safe confinement will stand for 100 years. Beneath it, the sarcophagus slowly degrades, and beneath that, the ruins of Reactor 4 continue to decay. Radioactive materials leak through cracks. Water seeps through the foundation. And somewhere in that darkness, perhaps, lie answers to questions we have not yet learned to ask. Tonight, we remember the miners who dug that tunnel, the liquidators who sacrificed their health and lives to contain the disaster, the firefighters whose uniforms lie abandoned in a flooded basement, the workers whose names were never recorded, whose graves were never marked. We remember the secrets that were buried, the experiments that were hidden, the truth that was covered up, and we acknowledge that beneath the concrete and the steel and the radioactive debris, there are spaces that remain unexplored, questions that remain unanswered, secrets that the blackout zone still holds. The tunnel beneath Reactor 4 was filled with concrete. The passages were sealed, the doors were locked, and in the darkness below, silence reigns, a silence that will last for thousands of years, a silence that holds secrets the Soviet Union could not destroy because they were buried too deep, hidden too well, sealed beneath layers of concrete and radiation and time. Let us rest now, here at the edge of knowing, where facts fade into mystery and the darkness beneath holds truths we may never uncover. Sleep well.